Good evening and welcome to tonight's forum. I'm Jennifer Poulikides with UCLA Government and Community Relations. Thank you for attending this evening's event. We're very pleased to have you here. As we begin, I will acknowledge that we are gathering tonight on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples. We have a few housekeeping items to review before we get started. Our goal tonight is to have an informative, peaceful, and respectful event. At UCLA, we hold freedom of speech and expression as intrinsic to the values of our campus environment, as well as those of higher education. Our challenge is to ensure we make room for all perspectives, which includes the right to present a variety of speakers and programs. We understand perspectives on certain issues may elicit disagreement and recognize and value the rights of individuals to express their viewpoints. However, we will not permit a response or a protest that is so disruptive so as to effectively silence the invited speakers and prevent these speakers from communicating with a willing audience. Please note that security is present and prepared to approach any individual or group that creates any disruption during tonight's program. The individual group will be warned, and if the disruption continues, they will be escorted out of the venue. Now onto more pleasant topics. We are pleased that tonight's candidate forums are the result of a collaboration between UCLA and several of our community partners. The topics and questions that will be posed to the candidates were generated in collaboration with these partners and our moderators. Our media partner for tonight's event is Spectrum One News. They're recording these candidate forums to be aired on Friday, October 7th, beginning at 8 p.m. In addition, tonight's event is being live streamed on the Hammer channel and also will be available for viewing there following the event. Finally, if you haven't already, please take a moment to silence your phones and electronic devices. Thank you for your consideration and attention, and it's now my pleasure to ask Chancellor Jean Block to offer a few opening remarks.
Thank you, Jennifer, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Hammer Museum and to the Los Angeles City Council District 5 and the Los Angeles County Supervisorial District 3 candidate forums, so 2 forums tonight. It's not just a privilege for us to host tonight's discussions, it's part of our very mission as a public research university with a commitment to community service in Los Angeles. This is what we do. UCLA may be global in our reach, but we never forget where we're planted. In our classrooms, students examine issues facing our community such as homelessness and affordable housing, public health, environmental sustainability, transportation, and economic recovery, all issues that are deeply important to Los Angeles. Our renowned scholars conduct research to better understand the world that we live in, and especially this region. And we work with partners, including our elected officials, to develop solutions and to bring them to fruition for the benefit of our city. UCLA also supports voting efforts on and off campus. We work really hard to make certain that our students vote, and they do actually in large numbers. I'm proud of that. And much of that work can be found on bruinsvote.ucla.edu. So putting a forum on like this one is a collaborative effort. And on behalf of UCLA and the Hammer Museum, I'd like to thank our partners for making this evening possible. They are Spectrum One News, the North Westwood Neighborhood Council, the West LA Chamber of Commerce, Westwood Community Council, Westwood Neighborhood Council, and the Westwood Village Improvement Association. It really does take a village to put on a forum. And now I'm pleased to introduce our moderators for tonight's forums: news anchor Alex Cohn, and UCLA Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost Darnell Hunt. Alex Cohn hosts the Spectrum News 1 television show Inside the Issues and the podcast SoCal in 17. She is deeply familiar with our local issues, and many of us are familiar with her voice. Alex spent nearly 2 decades as a host, reporter, and producer at NPR, Marketplace, KPCC, and KQED. Darnell Hunt was appointed as UCLA's Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost this September, so he's really brand new at this job after serving as Dean of Social Science for many years. Prior to joining UCLA in 2001, he was chair of the sociology faculty at the University of Southern California, although we really don't hold that against him. He's a media and race scholar whose recent work examines diversity and access in the entertainment industry. So please join me in welcoming our moderators. We're in for a very informative and very engaging evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chancellor Block. I'm going to get us started with some house rules. My name is Alex Cohen. As you heard, I'm the political anchor at Spectrum News 1, and along with my co-moderator, Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost Darnell Hunt, we will be guiding our discussion this evening, during which we will host 2 candidate forums, one for LA City Council District 5 and the other for the LA Board of Supervisors District 3 race. To help us guide through this discussion this evening, I'm going to outline our program and discuss the rules and formats for these 2 forums. First and foremost, the golden rule: do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Please be respectful and polite. Number 2, all candidates will be asked the same questions in our 2 separate forums, and they will be given the same amount of time to answer. We have 2 types of questions: general long-form questions and rapid-fire questions. General questions will have each candidate having a 2-minute time maximum to answer the question. Our second question, the rapid fire, these are questions with very short answers, and we hope you can do so in a 30-second time frame. We have a timer down here. Everybody sees it. Everyone acknowledges the timer. It will help us keep this train running on time. When answering your general questions, we ask you to keep your eyes on that timer from time to time. When the clock shows 15 seconds, we'll ask you to kind of start wrapping up then, and then when the clock hits 0, you must stop talking. You don't want me and Darnell to have to get tired. The speaking order is going to rotate for every question, with each candidate having the opportunity to answer every other question first. So we're going to get started, and this first question will start with Katy and then Sam. You have 1 minute to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit why you're running for this specific seat. So Katy Yaroslavsky, let's start with you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. To all of our co-hosts, to Chancellor Block, I'm honored and grateful to be here for this opportunity. I'm an environmental attorney and regional policymaker. I'm a mom. My husband and I have 3 young kids. And I'm running for office because I'm really frustrated at the state of our city. This is my hometown, and I want it to be a place where all of us and our families can thrive, but it doesn't feel like that place right now. And the way we bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to be is by electing effective, ethical, and proven people into these seats of local power. I'm the product of entirely public schools from K through 12, UC Berkeley, UCLA Law School, go Bruins. I spent a decade in the private sector, first as a land use attorney and then as the general counsel of a climate change nonprofit. And for the last 6.5 years, I've made policy on behalf of LA County's 10 million people as a senior policy advisor to County Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, where I focused on infrastructure and sustainability, the creative economy, and public health. My experiences make me uniquely qualified to do this job starting on day 1. I'm looking forward to partnering with all of you to make Los Angeles into the place we know it needs to become, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation tonight.
Thank you so much.
time.
Sam.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you, UCLA, and all the community partners. My name is Sam Yebri, and I'm running for City Council because Los Angeles, the city that I love, that enabled my immigrant family to live the American dream, where I'm raising 4 young kids and where I started a business, is in crisis. And more of the same is just not going to cut it anymore. We have seen over the last 7 years homelessness in CD5 skyrocket and increase 175%. Our streets are less safe than ever. We've seen Los Angeles went from 2 homicides in CD5 per year to 20 over the last 2 years, and rents are skyrocketing, and people are living paycheck to paycheck. We know that we can't continue doing the same thing over and over again. I'm not a career politician. I've spent the last 2 decades trying to make Los Angeles a better place as a nonprofit leader, as a lawyer, as a city commissioner. Here in Westwood, on the board of our local library. I'm running because I think we can do better as a city. And we have to. I want Los Angeles to be a place where every family can live, work, thrive, and be safe again.
Great. And I will note that for the questions, Darnell and I will alternate. I will ask the first question. This time, Sam Yeber, you will give the first answer. And this is a question about transportation. The Sepulveda Transit Corridor is expected to be one of the largest public works projects in the nation, but it's also kind of one of the most controversial. Everybody's got a different idea about how it should best be built. For example, the Bel Air Association has taken a no tunneling stance on this project. The Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association, very critical of the monorail options. If elected, do you have a preferred alternative? How will you work with various and diverse communities to build consensus on this project? And Sam, we begin with you.
Thank you. So this is a really important question because this is really about the future of Los Angeles, the kind of city we want to see. First off, I'm really excited about both the Purple Line coming to Westwood and the Sepulveda Transit Corridor. My family's car light. My wife and I have one car. I get around walking, taking scooter, taking public transportation, carpooling wherever I can. And that's really the future. I want more and more families to be able to get out of their cars. We know that cars are the largest emitters of greenhouse gases, and it's an environmental imperative to get people out of their cars. So one thing that is imperative about the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project is that there must be a station on campus with a direct link to the Purple Line. That has to be a non-starter for any other conversation, because without doing that, the multi-billion-dollar investment that we're making in this project is all for naught. 80,000 cars drive through Westwood every single day to get to UCLA, the second largest employer in all of LA County. And by stopping on the UCLA campus and having that link to the Purple Line, it's going to transform Westwood. It's going to make sure people actually take this. And in terms of tunneling, there's an environmental process that's happening right now. There's 6 different routes. My preference is the hard rail, because I think that's really the future. That will allow more people to take it and allow more people to get from the valley to UCLA and down to the airport and really transform UCLA's reach and also the West Side's reach. But I know there's an environmental process. We all have to evaluate to see what the risks are, depending on what those routes say. And I'm going to work with people who have strong opinions on both sides of whether it should be hard rail or monorail. But if there is not an approach that could work, that's something else that doesn't allow for a campus stop, I will not support any alternative, because there must be a stop at the UCLA station that connects to the Purple Line at Westwood and Wilshire and Gailey and Wilshire.
Katy.
So I'll start out by saying we need to make it easier for people to get out of their cars. And the transportation system we build out over the next 20, 30, 40 years has to be safe, it has to be efficient, it has to be cost-effective for people to take, it needs to get people where they want to go, it needs to be a pleasant experience. And so I'll approach the answer to that question with all of that in mind. I think whether it's a monorail or underground, I'm going to wait until the CEQA process is completed to see what the impacts are going to be, because there are impacts with either alternative, and there are trade-offs, and there are people who think that there are winners and people who think that they're losers based on which alternative is chosen. We absolutely need to stop on campus, and it needs to connect seamlessly with the rest of our mass transit infrastructure. First mile, last mile build-out is going to be really important. I'm going to make sure that that's done before the station comes to UCLA. As someone with a deep background in climate and land use planning, I see a huge opportunity for making the Westwood, the village, the university much more accessible across the west side and the city more broadly. In terms of stakeholder process and how I'm going to bring people together, I have nearly 20 years of leading stakeholder processes on very complicated, contentious issues. And so my office is going to lead an iterative, inclusive process where we bring people to the table early, give them pieces of it that they care about, and let them work on figuring out solutions. And I think that, like all good policymaking, the solution lies somewhere in the middle. And so making people feel like they get enough out of something so that it works for them is going to be really important. Mitigating impacts, making sure communities understand and hear that we're doing everything we can to mitigate impacts. That's what I have experience doing with things like Measure W, Safe Clean Water Program, creating LA County's first sustainability office, and so I'll do that again here.
Okay, so you both mentioned Westwood in your previous answers. So let's talk about Westwood a little bit. Over the last several years, Westwood Village has struggled to keep businesses open. While the COVID-19 pandemic and the Amazon effect have had huge impacts on the village, especially when it comes to the labor market and changing consumer buying habits, many businesses simply can't seem to keep their doors open. What plans do you have aimed at infusing revitalization efforts in the village? Are you considering any policies that would incentivize businesses to come to Westwood Village? And how would you engage with local stakeholders? And Katie, you go first.
Yeah, sure. This is a great question. I see Andrew in the front. Andrew just left as the president of the Westwood Village BID. I know they've been doing a lot of great work on trying to work with the business community in UCLA and partners, and I'm looking forward to continuing that partnership with your successor. We need to make it easier for businesses to open and operate in Westwood. The long-time specific plan, which put up hurdle after hurdle, making it hard for businesses to open, which regulated which kind of uses could come in. If you're a business owner and you want to give it a shot in Westwood Village, and it's a restaurant or a positive use, you should be able to come in and open up shop, and whether you succeed should be based on whether or not people want to come in and buy what you have to sell. I also think smarter land use planning more broadly and updating our community plans is really important. So as a land use lawyer, and when we put housing in the right places, we create activity on the street. And that's really important for businesses. When we put in protected, connected bike networks to make it easy for people to come in and out of the village without having to circle looking for parking, that will help with bringing business in and retaining businesses. We have a real opportunity to revitalize Westwood in a way that we haven't seen a vibrant Westwood in a generation. My mom grew up in Westwood and used to come to movie premieres, and they'd get dressed up and they'd go shopping and out to lunch, and it was like a special occasion. And that hasn't happened in a long time in Westwood. And by updating our community plan in an intelligent, thoughtful way, we can really draw people back to Westwood. You've got a great base of residents from all over, people who work here. UCLA is one of the largest jobs providers in the region. And so there's pent-up demand for it. And so by making smarter land use decisions, by getting people out of their cars, making it easier for people to get here and stay here rather than taking their business someplace else, downtown, Century City, Beverly Hills. And we're starting to see rays of hope, right? We've got some great new restaurants. My favorite new restaurant in LA is in Westwood Village. It's called Violet Bistro. It's wonderful. It's fancy. It's a little fancy. But anyway, so there's a lot happening, and I'm excited. I'm so excited to work with all the stakeholders to make it happen.
Thank you. Sam?
So Westwood's really close to my heart. I grew up here. I still live here. I bring my kids to the village almost every week. We go to D.D. Reese, and for me, it's sad to see what's happened. Obviously, retail has had a challenge everywhere, but a 42% commercial availability rate, 32% commercial vacancy rate in the village is really a tragedy. And there's many culprits, right? There's a specific plan that's out of date that was finally updated recently. There's a community plan that needs to be updated so we can have more housing near Westwood, both for the students and just in general to bring life. And we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity with the Purple Line coming at Wilshire and Gailey, Wilshire and Westwood, to really add the density that we need to see a vibrant Westwood Village. But it goes a lot more than that. So there's 64 property owners, there's homeowners, there are stakeholders, there's student groups in UCLA. We have to bring everyone together. And I will bring my skill as not only a litigator who will fight for clients, but also a mediator who knows how to find shared values and interests to get people to a better result. Because we all want a Westwood that has a lot of different uses, that is vibrant, that's safe. And we don't talk enough about safety too. Andrew and now Michael Russell at the BID have done a really good job with this ambassador program, but crime is up. There have been some incidences of crime in the village. When I did the Westwood homeless count 2 years ago, there were 33 people who were unhoused in Westwood Village alone. That's a big part of this issue too, is that we have to get people indoors faster, and then we have to do some long-term planning. We have Google coming at the south part of Westwood and Rancho Park. We need to create a tech corridor. We have to connect the Expo line and Westwood with microtransit, with bike lanes, and then we've got to help our small businesses. As if elected, I'd be the only one of the 15 council members who's a small business owner who's ever had to run and operate a business. I know that every fee and fine and delay that small businesses deal with because of the specific plan and other issues, it crushes businesses, and we can't allow that to continue. So I want to help legacy businesses survive. We just finally passed through the Conservancy a legacy business program. Al fresco dining needs to be permanent. And then most importantly, I want to create make Broxton permanent, pedestrian only, bring life to it. And for those of you who were here a couple days ago, 15,000 people were in Westwood Village when UCLA students were back. That's what Westwood Village should always be like.
All right. We're going to move to affordable housing. Earlier this year, the City Council gave final approval to update the plan to house LA and implement zone changes to accommodate the construction of roughly 255,000 new homes. Do you think that that goal is achievable? Why or why not? And if elected, are there policy changes that you specifically would want to introduce to try and achieve that goal? And Sam, we start with you.
So I don't think it's achievable with the current zoning and the current leadership. For decades, Los Angeles has failed to build enough affordable housing and workforce housing. I think of the UCLA students nearby, and I think of my interns and volunteers. How are they going to afford to live in Los Angeles with rents skyrocketing? As we know, 9024 is the most expensive zip code to rent in outside of New York. So we have to do a couple things. Well, let me start off with some experience that I have. I'm on the board of a nonprofit called EDA, which is just building affordable housing for adults with special needs right here in the 5th District. And it took us 2.5 years to go through the permitting and planning process for a project that had no opposition, no parking issues, no appeals. It literally took 2.5 years for the city to do its basic inspections, and that's not acceptable. For projects like that are win-wins, we have to not, in the words of Congresswoman Karen Bass, not move them to the front of the line. They need their own line. These win-win projects have to be rushed forward because that's what we need right now. We need more housing for folks who are unhoused. We need more housing for people who work in our communities of workforce housing. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to invest in acquiring, preserving, converting, and building more affordable housing. So right now, in terms of conversions, it's really too complicated to convert office and retail and commercial into housing. We have to make it a lot easier. And same thing with acquiring low-cost apartments. We can't build ground up. It's much faster, much more cost-effective, and more environmentally sustainable to acquire and to convert. And then we have to preserve affordable housing that's naturally occurring. And we have to rigorously enforce our affordable covenant laws. So right now, when a density bonus is given out to a developer and all they have to do is 10% of affordable units, there's no one making sure those folks, those units are going to folks who are low income. We have to enforce those rules, and we have to make sure people who are low income tenants don't lose their homes. As this eviction moratorium eventually goes away, it's very expensive to replace those. And then we have to streamline and make it a lot faster to build affordable housing. That happens through zoning, hiring more planners, reducing fees, like I said, creating a separate line for affordable and workforce housing, and ultimately taking advantage of the subway coming 7 subway stations to CD5. We have a chance to build a lot more housing near those stations, and that's where housing should go.
Katy, your opportunity to talk about the future of affordable housing.
Yeah, so we have a real opportunity as we think about what we want Los Angeles to look like for the next 50 and 100 years, and that's through our community plan update process. As a former land use attorney, I understand how important it is that we do this in partnership with communities, that they're at the table early, we're deciding together where that density should go. CD5 has the largest job centers outside of downtown LA, right? We have UCLA, we have Cedars, we have Century City. It's almost 500,000 jobs, and most of the people who work here can't afford to live anywhere near here, which is why we have the terrible traffic we do on the west side, and why it's hard for employers to find people and retain them. It's so expensive to live close to where you work if you work on the west side. And so as we update our community plans, we put that housing, and it needs to be affordable and workforce housing. The market's going to take care of the luxury housing. We see it all over the place. And we need to put it near our new metro stations that are coming through the west side for the first time in a generation. It's very exciting, and near those job centers. The challenge isn't so much the zoning as it is the financing and how long and cumbersome it is to put together all the financing that you need to get one of these projects off the ground. And because the planning process is so slow, the carrying costs are that much higher than they should be. So you wait 2-3 years to get the permits, you go through a CEQA process, maybe you're exempt. And so you have all these costs, and then the financing, you piece it together, it's like a layer cake with a bunch of different funding streams. And so we need to rationalize that and come up with a more coherent funding stream so that people can apply to some sort of a central financial institution, whether it's the city, the state, where you can grab money, get a project greenlit, and start building it. I'll just end by saying this. This isn't going to be easy, and it's not just waving a wand and saying, okay, departments all work faster. And it's not something that the council can directly oversee because the mayor oversees the departments, not the council, which is why it's really important to have a good working relationship with the mayor and the department heads. And I'm planning on having both.
Yeah. So it goes without saying that homelessness is a top-of-mind issue throughout the city. Residents and business owners are frustrated. The 2022 homeless count reported more than 41,980 homeless individuals in the city and more than 69,144 in the county, yet we don't even know if these figures are accurate. Recently, several city council members have called for an audit due to discrepancies in those figures. Just this past weekend, we learned that $150 million of unspent federal funds were returned to HUD. Do you have any plans to overcome city and county bureaucracy and house these individuals? What are your recommendations for transparency moving forward? And Katie, you're up first.
Yeah, so I actually went out and did the homeless count this year, and it was on one of the coldest nights of the year. And we were out for 2 hours, 3 hours, and we didn't see one unhoused person. So I'm guessing that that was part of why the count was so low. And whenever you do a point in time count, you're bound to have sort of discrepancies based on conditions on the ground and a whole host of other things. Look, I think there's a bunch of stuff we need to be doing all at once to make real progress on homelessness. There's no one reason people become unhoused, and so we need a bunch of different buckets to make meaningful progress on it. The first is around prevention. We need to do a much better job of keeping people housed in the first place. Right now, more people become unhoused every day than we're getting off the streets and connecting to housing and services. So until we can slow the rate at which people are falling in, we're never going to get our arms around the problem. And so we know which populations are overrepresented in the unhoused population, right? Youth aging out of the foster care system, people coming out of jail, seniors on a fixed income, LGBTQ youth and seniors, and so on and so on. A lot of them are already accessing county programs, and so if we reach out proactively to them every couple of months and make sure that they're housing secure for the next couple of months and providing resources if they're not, that's hugely important. And the city and the county are finally starting to realize that prevention has to be more heavily invested in. The second is we need to do a better job of getting people off the streets faster and connecting them to housing and services. Interim housing, motels, hotel conversions, safe camping, safe parking, and permanent housing, yes, all need to be part of it. Third, we need better coordination between the county and the city. Loss is broken. It needs to be either massively reformed or overhauled and something new. And as someone who's worked at the county, I understand this need for collaboration. And until LAWSA is reformed in a meaningful way, maybe it means that the principals, the elected themselves, sit on LAWSA, so there's less finger pointing. We need to put somebody or some entity in charge, because until we do that, nothing's going to get solved. Governance needs to be retooled. And finally, we need more mental health and addiction beds, because there's simply no place now for people to go to get the help they need.
Sam?
So I really appreciate this question, because we are all frustrated. Right? We are all compassionate people who've taxed ourselves and are willing to help people who are unhoused to get them into shelter. But we're spending $2 billion per year at the city and the county level on our homelessness crisis. We're paying upwards of $850,000 or $1 million per unit of homeless housing. And what is the result of all this spending? In CD5, over the last 7 years, homelessness has increased 175%. Over those same 7 years, my opponent, she referenced her time at the county, had a chance to make a big difference, to talk about collaboration and reform LAWSA as a senior advisor and senior public health deputy to powerful County Supervisor Sheila Kuehl. But under her watch, like I said, homelessness went up 175% in our district. So if you're happy with how things are going on homelessness, feel free to vote for my opponent. But if you think that we can and must do better to get more people indoors and get them the mental health care that they need, I will bring renewed urgency and I'll bring new approaches. My guiding principle is we have to move people indoors faster to save their lives. Every single night, 5 Angelenos are dying on our streets of Los Angeles from overdose, from violence, from exposure, and that is unacceptable. What we have to do is move faster to build interim housing and shelters so we can triage people. We have to build more mental hospitals like what UCLA Health is doing. Kudos to turn Olympia Medical Center into a psych hospital. We need more addiction care, beds, and facilities. And yes, we have to enforce our anti-camping laws to move people indoors faster, because it will save their lives. And this is the only way forward. We cannot allow people to continue to wither away and suffer on our streets. It's not compassionate. It's not progressive. The right thing to do is to move with urgency, to move people into shelters and on their path to permanent supportive housing.
Katy Young, Yaroslavsky, when you were talking about your mom getting dressed up to go into Westwood, I have to say I felt a real pang of nostalgia. I'm sure other folks here did as well. My parents used to bring me and my little brother here. This was our weekend destination. We used to go to the Village Suite, and we would order gelato there. Chocolate by death was the flavor. I would pay hundreds to get a taste of that again, but I have to say as a parent now, I don't know if I would bring my kids here on a weekend due to some of the issues we've talked about before, which is concerns about public safety. So we'd like to hear from each of you, again, beginning with Sam. If elected, what specific programs would you ensure the safety of community members and business owners throughout District 5?
The most important job of a council member is public safety. And I actually have a record on this. In 2013, I served our city on a gun violence prevention task force under the city attorney. We designed policy to get guns off the streets. You may have just followed the news. There's a shooting at a school in Oakland again that reinforces how important it is to stop gun violence in our community. I went through LAPD Citizens Academy in 2018 to understand how our city can be policed better. I did that as a neighborhood co-chair of our public safety committee. And I fought against hate and bigotry on the board of the Anti-Defamation League at a time when hate crimes are skyrocketing through the roof against every community. So my plan moving forward is, first, we have to rebuild our depleted LAPD force. We're down to 9,200 police officers. We need to get back to what we had under Mayor Virgoso, which was 10,000 officers. We need to hire more women officers so they can deal with certain types of homelessness, mental health, and domestic violence calls. We have to narrow the responsibilities of police officers. They have to focus on the guns and gangs that are ravaging Los Angeles and get mental health calls and homelessness calls out of their responsibilities. And then we have to get 460 police officers that are behind a desk dealing with subpoenas and paperwork and filing out patrolling neighborhoods. Second, we have to enforce our laws and end the lawlessness that's taken root throughout Los Angeles. And while we don't control our district attorney, we must enforce our criminal and misdemeanor laws. Third, we have to invest in programs that are proven to interfere and prevent crime, after-school programs, job training, but also partner with every neighborhood in the 5th District through neighborhood watch programs, technology, and other programs that we know will reduce crime, including some of the work with the BID in the Westwood community. And then finally, we have to end street encampments throughout Los Angeles. Every single night, like I mentioned, 5 Angelinos are withering away, suffering, and dying, and there's crime that's happening against them and also crime that's happening by them. We have to move them indoors because it's burdening our police officers and our firefighters. Half of the phone calls they receive every single day relate to homelessness, and that's why I'm proud to be endorsed by the police officers and firefighters of Los Angeles in this race.
So LA government's, local government's #1 job is to keep people safe. And I'm committed to making sure LA is a truly safe place for all of us, for our families, for business owners. I support a well-staffed, well-funded, well-trained, accountable, responsive police department. I'm going to prioritize moving more officers from behind desks out into the field and make sure that we have the right people responding to non-emergency 911 mental health calls. A lot of the homeless response is better handled by mental health professionals, social workers. They don't want to be doing the work. LAPD doesn't want to be doing the work. It's much better if we have the right people doing the response, and it'll free up officers to be out on patrol every day. It'll reduce response times. It'll increase morale. The next mayor, the council, the LAPD chief should together decide what the right number of officers is after we do that shifting around. I don't know how many more we need to add, but we definitely need more officers out on the street. I'm also committed to reducing response times. No one should have to be on hold when you call 911. It's completely unacceptable. It shouldn't require much in terms of resources, but it's very important that when you call 911, your call is answered and someone comes out promptly. I want to talk briefly about, more broadly, public safety is also about addressing the long-standing systemic violence against Black and brown communities. And so this means regular de-escalation training, hiring more women, requiring secondary education perhaps, insisting that officers are held accountable for misconduct. None of it's going to be inexpensive, but it's the only way to ensure that public safety is real for all Angelinos. We'll end up saving money on litigation in the long term, and we can reinvest that money in communities and public safety. And at the same time, look, public safety is also about investing in all the communities of Los Angeles. Public safety is a regional issue, and so we need to be investing in every single community of LA. Affordable housing, education, job training. This is also how we make our communities safe and healthy.
Great. So let's turn our attention now to leadership and governance. Over the last several years, we've seen our national and local political discourse plunge to a level that was once unimaginable. In fact, just last month on 2 occasions, city council chambers had to be cleared by the police and arrests were made. If you become our next council member, how will you lead to restore respect, integrity, decency, and civility to our political discourse? We'll start with Katy.
This is a great question. The level of divisiveness in government has always been really upsetting. And it's only just in the last few years reached the local level. And part of why I was so attracted to this job is because it's nonpartisan. And so you often, until recently, have avoided a lot of the really nasty, toxic discourse. And we're seeing it now at the local level from both the far left and the far right. I get trolled by the far left, I get trolled by the far right. And so I think, the way we solve it is by being kind to each other and treating each other with respect and giving each other the benefit of the doubt and looking for people who are interested in problem solving. I think we need people in local government who are civil and compassionate and patient and interested in solving problems. This job is about using the tools of government in partnership with communities to problem solve. That's what this is. And if you're not here to problem solve, you're part of the problem. And it's really one of the things that's been interesting about running for office is in normal life, we're kind to each other. We give people the benefit of the doubt. We don't take gratuitous digs at each other. But when you decide to put your hat in the ring because you want to serve your community, it's like fair game. And it's not okay. And the only reason why people get away with it is because we all let them. And so I think it's important to really listen to what people are saying and about their priorities, not only what they say, but what they don't say and how they talk about their opponents and sort of the universe at large and the political scene, because you can learn a lot about how someone's going to govern, whether or not someone's going to be civil and look for the best in what both sides have to offer rather than add to the divisiveness. And I'm not here for the divisiveness. I'm here to problem solve.
Sam, your turn.
Yeah, this is the first time we've had that question. We've had, Katy, 35 of these debates. And one thing we share in common, we've both been trolled by the extremists on both sides. And there's that fine line in democratic policymaking between making sure people are heard, making sure people have a seat at the table, listening, and incorporating those ideas into policymaking. But when that becomes, where that line ends and where it becomes dangerous is where those ideas turn into action, when there becomes violence. And I was moved by what Council President Nuri Martinez said when those activists attempted, in her words, to bum rush and take over city council chambers, that we will not legislate out of fear. And yes, we want to talk to everyone and hear everyone, but when that language becomes violent, and also when it is starting to shape policy in a very dangerous way, I think we need leaders who are going to say, no, we will not abolish the police. I understand where it's coming from. I share your vision that we need to invest in underserved communities and de-escalation and training, but we need men and women who are armed to deal with violent crime. And if you disagree on an issue such as the 4118 anti-camping ordinance, we can respectfully disagree. But we also need leaders who will not be bullied, who are not more concerned about what people say on Twitter than how their policies will actually impact people. This is not an academic exercise. The policies that Katy or I will be making will impact people's lives. It'll impact whether or not people will continue to die at historic numbers on our streets. It's whether or not, God forbid, there's a shooting in Westwood Village under Chancellor Block's watch, or whether, will it be affordable for people to live near campus. I know you just acquired a major property down in Rancho Palos Verdes. I wish it was in CD5. I wish it was the AJU Bel Air property. But these are real consequences, and I'm going to be your partner. And regardless of what people on Twitter say or people come up to me and yell at us, we're going to always do the right thing. I'm always going to listen, because that's what democratic policymaking is about.
We have one more question before we move into the rapid fire section of the evening, and I'm a real sucker for this one, historic preservation. Nearly 50 buildings are designated historically, architecturally, or culturally significant under the Westwood Village specific plan. And yet the majority of these historic structures remain unprotected, and they're at risk from alterations, possibly even demolition. So Sam, beginning with you, what, if any, tangible steps would you take to support the protection and revitalization of Westwood Village's historic character?
Yeah, so I think it's imperative. Westwood Village is a village. It has a wonderful history. We're about to celebrate our 100th anniversary in a couple of years. And my favorite buildings in all of Los Angeles are the Fox Theater, the Bruin Theater. I mean, these are places that I used to go to see movies here, and I want to make sure that we protect those buildings and the history. It's really important. I'll give a good case study. So there's some leaders here actually from the Westwood community. There's a theater down the street called the Crest, and I grew up right behind it on Wellworth, and someone was going to buy it, turn it into apartments, and the neighborhood got together and said, no, this is an historic theater. There's Art Deco tiles that are amazing, and UCLA, to its incredible credit, with the Nimoy family, acquired the property, and they're going to turn it into a performing arts theater. It is a win-win-win. It's going to bring life to Westwood Boulevard just south of Wilshire. We preserve something that's beautiful and historic, and our history is not going to be demolished. And it's really important throughout Los Angeles that we preserve our history. It's not mutually exclusive. It's not either more housing or protect our history. We can do both. Whether it's Television City or the Fairfax Theater, all throughout the 5th District, there's some incredible buildings that we have to protect. And in Westwood, there may be some buildings that we have to do more in terms of designation, but sometimes adaptive reuse is the best approach, right? There's an opportunity to keep the history, but build within the character and to keep it. And that's the kind of Westwood Village that I want to see. I want the beautiful facades and the Art Deco tiles and these wonderful buildings to exist and potentially evolve for the next 100 years under Chancellor Block's leadership and all the people in Westwood. There's a real opportunity to make sure that Westwood is vibrant for everyone for many years to come.
Katy.
So I live in a 100-year-old duplex in an HPOZ, and it doesn't have a dishwasher, but it's got character. And part of why we live there is because it's special. It's a special space, and you can feel the history. And so much of what makes Los Angeles is our architecture. It's a part of our culture and who we are, and it's worth preserving and protecting, especially when the experts say something is worth preserving and protecting. And there's a lot of that in Westwood Village. And at the same time, there's a lot of it that's not. And so being really thoughtful about allowing for new development that will complement what's there, while still acknowledging that we have a housing shortage, and Westwood Village is right next to one of the region's largest jobs employers, and we're going to have Metro coming through. There's an opportunity to do both. And like I said earlier, good policy making is about balance, and smart land use planning is about balance. And that's where the community comes in, and that's where the stakeholders come in. And so, it's a question of looking parcel by parcel, block by block, and figuring out, what's the first mile, last mile going to look like around the metro stations? And then where are we going to put the housing? And how are we going to work with the property owners to make sure they have the resources they need to actually restore and revitalize these buildings? A lot of the buildings are sitting empty, and some of them have been empty since I was a law student at UCLA. And so we need to make it easier for them to do the right thing. And sometimes that's, one of the biggest jobs that we don't talk about a lot of a city council member. You're the legislature for the second largest city in the United States. And so you carry a lot of weight when your council goes, say, to Sacramento or DC and lobbies hard for something. And so we need to be advocating for more resources to bring to Los Angeles for things like historic preservation, to make it easier for property owners to do the right thing.
We have moved into the rapid fire section of the evening. So from here on out, you'll have 30 seconds to answer these questions. Katy Young Yaroslavsky, this will be yours to answer first. Currently, bike lanes along Westwood Boulevard are not included in the city's mobility plan. Would you favor placing bicycle lanes along Westwood Boulevard, yes or no? And if yes, where would you propose adding a bicycle lane in Westwood Village?
So this gets back to, yes, I think we need a direct shot up Westwood Boulevard. I can't tell you how many UCLA professors I've spoken to who live at the south end of the district or down in Palms or beyond Culver City who really want to bike to work, and they just don't feel safe right now. And so I do think we need a direct shot. There's plenty we can do with transportation planners to minimize impacts to local businesses, make sure that the parking's there. Maybe it's a shared parking program for the village, et cetera. So yes, I do.
Sam.
Yeah, so it's imperative to connect the Expo line to the Purple Line, right, down in Westwood and Pico. There are three approaches that folks have suggested: down Westwood, down Glendon, down Gailey, And I've spoken to people who are really passionate about each one. So I'm going to sit down with these leaders and with Metro and MTA and find the right one that will work, because the subway's coming at Gailey and Wilshire and Westwood and Wilshire, and there's a real need for these bike lanes. So we're going to find the right one that works, that mitigates some of the adverse consequences of small businesses, right? That's a real issue. And all the buses that go through Westwood, we have to get it right. There's a lot at stake.
All right. So you have 30 seconds to answer this question. If elected, what city council committees or other regional entities are you interested in serving on, and why? And we're going to go first with Sam.
Sure. Homelessness, because this is the issue of the day. Public safety, because that is obviously really important to the 5th Council District. I knock on doors every night, and they tell me that this is really what they're worried about. And the budget, because that's where the money is. MTA, I will ask the mayor to appoint me to the MTA board, so with 7 subway stations coming to the 5th District, this is imperative. And then a fun one, Parks and Recs. I take our kids to parks every weekend, Rancho, Pan Pacific, Westwood, and all the little pocket parks, and we need a lot more pocket parks. That's going to be a priority for me as council member.
Katy?
So I'd like to be on homelessness. I think it's really important that we have people on there who can bring a regional perspective to a regional problem. Budget, because nothing happens without a budget, and I think it's a very important committee. Public safety, the environmental committee that has a very long name. If you know what I'm talking about, you know it's a very long committee name. And then Metro. I think having an infrastructure geek on the Metro board, someone who's grounded in sustainability with deep expertise, is going to be a good thing for the region.
And now to probably the only LA City ordinance that I think most Angelenos now know by number, 4118. As you both know, in early August, the City Council voted to extend it, now banning encampments within 500 feet of all public and private schools, daycare centers. If you were on the council at that time, how would you have voted on 4118 and why? And Katy, beginning with you.
So I would have voted for it. I don't think encampments belong in front of our schools or daycare centers, but they don't belong anywhere. And the way we enforce 4118 is really the important issue. It says where you can't sleep, but it doesn't say where you can. And so you need to pair it with deep street engagement and offers of housing and services. Otherwise, you're just moving people 500 feet around, and that's not solving anything. It's just increasing people's misery and shifting it to a different community 500 feet away. So it has to be paired with housing and services.
I would have supported it. I've supported it from day one. And if you remember, this expansion was at the request of LAUSD superintendent, because too many kids and parents and teachers had to navigate encampments on their way to school. It's worth noting that my opponent did tell the LA Times that she would not wield this ordinance against people who are homeless. She's told progressive clubs that she considers it inhumane and doesn't anticipate using it. So I do intend to use it. I think it'll save lives because it creates urgency and it helps transition people who are suffering and dying on our streets into shelter and into housing, into medical health care faster.
Okay, so here's a question about climate and sustainability. The City of Los Angeles released its Green New Deal in 2019 with 5 zeros, an aggressive goal: 0 carbon grid, 0 carbon transportation, 0 carbon building, 0 waste, and 0 wasted water by 2050. Are we making adequate progress? Are there additional efforts you would undertake to ensure a just transition to meet these goals? Sam?
I don't think we're making enough progress. First is we have not accelerated our permanent transition to electrification. None of us who've dealt with solar in the city of LA thinks that it's easy to be done. We have to become a world leader in solar capture, storage, distribution, and charging stations. We need charging stations everywhere. If we're supposed to get rid of all fossil fuel vehicles by 2035, we need these charging infrastructure throughout Los Angeles. Other things that we need to do more of: CD5 has more active oil and gas drill sites than any other district in the city of Los Angeles. We finally, there's a proposal to phase them out over 20 years, but we need an inspection ordinance. I've been a leader on this issue. We need to inspect and monitor on a 24/7 basis all oil and gas wells all throughout the CD5 in Los Angeles.
Katy?
No, we're not moving fast enough, and that's part of why I'm running. We need to be moving much more quickly with much more intentionality to make sure that as it gets hotter and drier, we're ready for it. So climate resilience is a really important part of this job. We oversee DWP. We have a hugely important role to play with parks and creating more green space and open space. I took the lead on developing Measure W, which is providing $300 million a year for more parks and stormwater capture so that we're not reliant on water from other places. And I'm going to bring those dollars to Council District 5. I created the program. I know where the money is.
with 7 seconds to spare. All right. We're going to talk about funding for law enforcement, something that you both have said you support. If a motion were introduced at City Council to partially defund the police budget or reallocate, would there be any circumstance under which you would be supportive of that idea? And if so, how would you suggest reallocating those funds? Katie, we'll begin with you.
No, I think we need a well-funded police department, a well-funded, well-staffed, well-trained, accountable police department, and all of that costs money. I'd rather make sure we're spending enough money and doing it right rather than bleeding a department dry.
Sam.
I would not support defunding the police budget. I do support improving how policing is done, and that requires more investment in training and recruiting, as well as oversight. And we need to hire more police officers. I agree with both candidates Caruso and Bass that we got to get our numbers up. We're down to 9,200 for a city of 4 million. We just don't have enough officers patrolling our streets, and we can't get back to 9,700 or 10,000, which I support, without the necessary police budget in place.
Okay, so we've reached the moment for candidate closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. And let me see, Katie, you're up first.
So thank you so much for bringing us together this evening. Thank you so much to the moderators. I'm proud of my track record of getting big things done in the public sector. I understand that so many of the challenges we're facing are regional and intersectional. Homelessness, public safety, public health, our economy. These are all complex challenges that are going to require nuanced solutions, and having people who know how to work across jurisdictions all the way up to the federal government, know where the money is, who know how to effectively leverage it and bring those resources to Los Angeles is going to be really important. I'm ready to get started on day one. I know how to do this work because I've already been doing it. I'm good at it. And I'm ready to step in and lead, not just on behalf of Council District 5, but on behalf of all Angelenos. I've led successful iterative stakeholder processes for nearly 2 decades, and I'm committed to using my office as an opportunity to create space for important conversations to happen, and for those conversations to then be translated into policies and programs that make things easier for Angelenos. I also understand, and this is important, that when you're one of 15 council members, you have to be collaborative. I don't care who gets the credit. And that's how we get really hard stuff done. There are only 3 women currently on the city council out of 15, and our policies tangibly suffer from this lack of representation. The first and last woman to hold this seat was in 1965, Roz Wyman. She is now 91 years old, and she's got my lawn sign on her front lawn, God bless her. I'm also honored to have the endorsement of the 2 candidates who didn't make the runoff. We had 30 candidate forums together. They got to know both of us. They're both endorsing me. I've been endorsed by the LA Times twice, Planned Parenthood, the Sierra Club, the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, Congressman Adam Schiff, Congresswoman Karen Bass, most of the other electeds whose districts overlap this one, and hundreds of community leaders who know me to be a problem solver. Thank you for being here tonight. I'd be grateful and honored to have your vote. If you're interested in learning more, you can go to the website, which is katyforla.com. I'd love to have you join us out on the Cascade Trail. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you to our moderators. Thank you to all of our hosts. I love Los Angeles. It's a city of endless possibilities, but it feels like a really tough place to live. For far too long, the people in City Hall have not reflected the energy, integrity, diversity, and creativity that define us as Angelenos. Instead, we've elected the same career politicians and bureaucrats who are advancing the same failed policies that have really run the city into the ground. We now have a chance to change course. I'm not a career politician. I'm not beholden to the status quo or career politicians who've gotten us into this mess. I'm a husband and father of 4 young kids. I'm a nonprofit leader who's building affordable housing for those with special needs. I'm a fighter for tenants and workers. And I'll be a warrior for the people of the 5th District because that's what I've been my entire life. Because I believe every family in Los Angeles deserves to live in a city that's safe and vibrant and as hopeful as the one that welcomed my immigrant family 40 years ago. But in order to make progress on our big issues of affordability of rent, crime, and homelessness, we have to change course on these policies. The contrast between my opponent and I is really stark. I will do everything I can to enforce our laws, keep our neighborhoods safe, and make sure our first responders have the resources they need. That's why I'm endorsed by the police officers and firefighters of Los Angeles. I'll also make sure we have balance on our policies and make sure people who are homeless get the help that they need faster. And that's why I'm endorsed by a broad coalition of leaders, including Henry Waxman, Holly Mitchell, Mayor Villaraigosa, and Ron Galpern, because they know that I will do the work to make a difference, because that's what I've been doing for 20 years in the community. That's what I'll be doing as your next council member. And now, I'll leave you with this. What we need right now in Los Angeles is not more of the same. We need someone who's going to look at these issues with a critical eye. We'll bring private, legal, nonprofit, and government experience. More of the same is going to continue us down a path where too many folks are going to be suffering in Los Angeles. I'd be honored to earn your vote, and please visit samforla.com to get involved with our campaign.
All right. So this concludes our first candidate forum. Katy and Sam, thank you for joining us this evening, sharing your insights and perspectives, and answering these questions about issues in our community. UCLA is committed to public education, but not just publication, also the public good. Forums like these are vital for advancing both. While our candidates may not align on all the issues before us, they are clearly committed to making this district and all of Los Angeles a better place for Angelenos. We ask that you remain seated while we prepare to begin the forum for the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors District 3 race. And as a reminder, this forum will be available to watch on Hammer Channel and also will be broadcast on Spectrum News 1 next month. Thank you.
I'm going to get some tape for one of the speakers.
All right, good evening, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us for this important discussion. My name is Darnell Hunt, and along with my co-moderator, Alex Cohen, anchor of Your Morning and host of Inside the Issues on Spectrum News 1, we will be guiding this next candidate forum for the race of Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, District 3. To help lead us through this discussion, I will outline tonight's program and discuss the rules and guidelines for our candidate forum. First, we ask that you be respectful and polite. Second, all candidates will be asked the same questions, except in one instance where the question is personalized for each candidate and be given the same amount of time to answer. 3, we have 2 types of questions: general long-form questions and rapid-fire questions. General questions allow each candidate 2 minutes to answer the question, and the rapid-fire questions 30 seconds. A timer is visible to all of us on the stage. It will be operated by the staff to keep the forum running on time and to help candidates time their responses. When answering general questions, candidates must keep an eye on the timer while speaking. When the clock shows 15 seconds, that is your signal to wrap up your answer. And when the clock hits 0, you must stop speaking at that point. The speaking order will rotate for every question, with each candidate having the opportunity to answer every other question first. Now let's begin this informative discussion with our candidate introductions. Candidates will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and to tell us a little bit about why they are running to become your representative on the Board of Supervisors. We will begin with Bob, then Lindsay.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's good to see the UCLA team here. Chancellor, it's great, and Keith Parker, who came to my mom's 90th birthday, is part of the family. Never forget, never forget. In my faith, it is the high holidays. And I was in Temple the other day, And I took a screenshot of a piece of a prayer that I think informs that first question. It says, "May the officers of our government be blessed with wisdom and good counsel. May they act in unison to promote the welfare of all, and may petty rivalry be banished from their deliberation." And I share that with you because I think it informs, in many ways, who I am. I didn't run for office till much later because I was focused on trying to help educate elected officials and work with them when we created the Capital Institute. And when I got elected, became speaker relatively quickly. First time in over 50 years elected unanimously by Democrats and Republicans, not on issues, but on the fact that I wanted to bring people together to work with folks. Often we talk about this side of the aisle and that side of the aisle. I got rid of both sides of the aisle. I mixed everybody up. And I sat next to Tom McClintock, who's one of the most conservative folks, to send the message and to be an example. And so I look at the role of the county supervisors, what informed me to, I took off for 12 years to work on renewable energy, came back to the Senate, worked on gigantic problems, always quietly behind the scenes. But really, the county is an arm of the state in the most simple ways. If you look at its near $40 billion budget, child welfare, adoption, you go to look at all the social safety net issues, probation, all those issues, all of those are informed in a very deep and elegant way with the state. And I just think that the issues that I have and experience that I've had and the scale by which we deal with things, this is a quarter of the state of California. It's critically important, and I think that my experience in these jobs, which we'll explain during the questions, is critically important and which informs a big part of why I chose this undertaking.
All right, thank you. Lindsay.
Thank you very much. Good evening. This election is really about a contrast of two visions and two paths. One that's going forward, positive, improving our county, investing in people with 21st century solutions to the problems that we face in our county. And one that takes us backwards, using failed policies of the past from someone who's had the opportunity to lead us in a different direction and has simply failed. We need experience solving the issues of homelessness and housing, keeping people safe, and the existential threat of climate change that we're all worried about in our communities. The county is the social safety net to take care of us in our communities. It is the services and support that we count on in our neighborhoods. And those services, that support, has been absent in a lot of our neighborhoods, and we see the impacts in the homelessness crisis that we face in our neighborhoods. In my community, we have developed a program that has an 80% success rate, getting people off the streets and into housing, services, or both. That's the kind of pragmatic problem solving we need in the county. We need someone who has hands-on experience and knows how to build coalitions, diverse coalitions that reflect the diversity of our district and our county. Someone who's ready to bring people together so we can work together for a brighter LA County. That's what I'm about. I'm about delivering and working with people so we're addressing the concerns that you see in your neighborhoods and actually meeting people where they are. That's what I've done for 15 years, and it's why I am endorsed by the LA Times, Planned Parenthood, the Democratic Party. In fact, I'm the only candidate endorsed by all of those. And on the International Safe Abortion Access Day, we have to have somebody who's ready to stand up to extremists. And I'm prepared to do that, which is why I'm the only candidate endorsed by Planned Parenthood.
All right. So our first question is in regards to the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project. What is your position on locating a metro station on the UCLA campus and providing a direct connection to the Purple Line in Westwood? Do you have any preferences among Metro's 6 proposed routes? And how will you leverage federal, state, and local dollars to ensure funding for this massive infrastructure project? And Lindsay, you're up first.
So I have a lot to say about Metro. I've been working with Metro on the Crenshaw Northern Extension to come up to my community in West Hollywood and to go to connect the valley all the way down to the South Bay. I have a lot of experience. I've been working on this alignment for years with Metro and personally attending over 300 community meetings, I think it is now, to make progress, to bring people together, to inform people what is coming to their neighborhoods so they have the opportunity to ask questions, express their concerns, and hear real solutions to the questions that they have. It's that experience that I want to bring to this problem that you raise, because I have heard from communities on the west side up to the valley that there are concerns. They haven't gotten the answers from Metro that they're looking for. They don't see solutions being proposed, and they are concerned that something's going to happen to their neighborhoods without their understanding. I'm prepared to work with neighborhoods and bring people together to ensure that there's an alignment, because this alignment is too important for us to fail. We have to deliver on this project, and we have to find a solution that works. Right now, there isn't an alignment proposed that actually solves all of the problems that we're looking to address. And in fact, some of the options create more problems than they actually solve. What we need is somebody who has the experience that I have working with Metro, bringing people together, and helping people understand how we build the infrastructure that works, and once it's built, how we keep people safe on that infrastructure. It's why the Metro operators have endorsed me in this race, because they know I have the experience working with them to deliver and make our transportation options safer, to connect us in the ways that we need to be connected, and get people moving around this county in the way that we need. We have to provide real solutions. Measure M was passed, and that's great, but it actually has to deliver on building the solutions that were promised, and Sepulveda is an important one of them.
All right, Bob, your turn.
Thanks very much. I start with stepping back and looking at the big picture and why do we have a problem and what's really going on. What's happened at Metro is they're organized in silos, and the construction people and the planning people, no one talks to anybody. So when you look at these 6 plans, anybody, just basic common sense, we have a $7 billion fund to pay for things. When the people at Metro were asked about cost for $28 billion, what they were proposing, they said, well, we don't look at costs, we don't consider that. It's a gigantic management problem, and the job of someone who sits on a board of directors, whether it's a company, whether it's the Board of Regents, University of California, or whether it's Metro, is to offer direction. And they've got a huge structural problem, and instead of just going along with what everybody else goes along with, it requires that management skill that I've had in not just in running the legislature and in running publicly traded companies, but to really elegantly look at the big picture and to put the structure in place. Because right now, we're nowhere. We don't know what the noise levels are. We know the costs don't make sense. None of it works. The 6, basically under the law, we have the California Environmental Quality Act. Politician terms, CEQA. That says you've got to look at options. What lawyers do is they throw out a bunch of options. Most of them aren't really real, and it doesn't really engage in some intelligent way. So yes, you need to engage the community. Yes, do all those things have to happen, none of which was done with the current supervisor with respect to this issue or with respect to Northridge or so many other lines that we tried to deal with. I had to put together all my own town halls and put together that stuff to bring the community together. But I would start with the broader issue. But I do support the issue. I don't support tunneling under Bel Air. I do support a UCLA station, critically important.
Next question is about homelessness. 2 minutes apiece for our candidates, starting with Bob Hertzberg. Let's talk a little bit about LAHSA, the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, recently coming under fire as it became clear that they returned $150 million worth of federal funding, which struck some people as odd, given that any one of us on any day, anywhere in this county can see what a crisis. It is also concerns about whether or not their most recent annual count was accurate. If elected, do you believe that LAHSA should be reformed, replaced, dissolved? And if elected, what specific solutions would you take to address the crisis of the unhoused?
Again, let's move past platitudes and how would you manage the problem? We have 88 cities in LA County, 88 cities. Long Beach is bigger than Boston. They're not included. When you read the report that was the Blue Ribbon Commission on homelessness, City of Los Angeles didn't participate. In the report, it says, well, nobody's really responsible. There's nobody really to blame. Yes, there is. If you have a management structure, somebody has to be in charge. In the current structure, nobody's in charge. Everybody points fingers. So the way you do this from a bottom-up approach. I couldn't do it in Sacramento from the top-down approach. I tried to do it with the LA County delegation of 31 members, is to pull together, I would do a pilot project. What is a pilot project? It's one that just applies to Los Angeles on homelessness, that would create a framework where politicians were legally bound to meet achievables and deliverables, not something you delegate, not something you give to somebody else. And why would you do it as a pilot project? Because when you try to get votes in the state, which when people say, oh, the state's different than the county, it might be different than a city, but the county and the state are integral. 90% of the money is flowed through the state, and all the policies flow there. So the idea is that when I'm trying to get votes on something, if I've got to go to Fresno or to Imperial County, someone says, well, this doesn't work for us. But if you have a standalone project, I've already talked to the governor about this, I've already talked to various players, that we create like an MTA-type operation that includes the rest of the other jurisdictions, Malibu, Venice, Santa Monica, huge contributors to tourism, huge contributors to the tax base that people are paying for, huge draws on homelessness. I would completely throw the whole thing out, start over in a very short order, and do it through a state-mandated deliverable that would make sure people were held accountable. Politicians, elected officials who are on the board, not others.
Lindsay Horvath.
So SB 679 was passed in the Senate by Senator Sidney Comlager, who supports me and has endorsed me in this race. And the governor signed that bill today, providing real solutions and describing a possibility, a way forward to develop new housing, to keep people in the housing that they can afford with rental assistance and counsel. There was a solution that came from the Senate. It just didn't come from my opponent. What we need are real solutions to the problems that we're facing, and LAHSA hasn't been able to deliver them. On that, we agree. We know that that's the truth, because even the executive director resigned, saying that she couldn't do what was asked of her in the job because of how LAHSA is designed and because of the obstacles and bureaucracy that exists. We need to scale that back. We need to make sure that elected officials are at the table, the ones that you trust to elect, the mayor, the board of supervisors. We need to make sure that the service providers, those who receive those services and who have been unhoused and have that lived experience, are all at the table in a publicly noticed meeting that meets regularly, that is accountable to the public, that shows you where dollars are being spent in neighborhoods, that shows you what services are already being invested in your neighborhoods. That's how we have transparency and accountability. And we have the people at the table who you elected to make those decisions. Right now, there's a lot of finger pointing between the cities and the county. And we know that the county has to step up because it is the social safety net for our cities. But we have to work together. And I have experience working at the local level, deploying street teams that meet people where they are, getting people connected to housing, services, mental health, and addiction recovery, making sure that they're actually staying off the streets and following through that system, and making sure that they aren't just being recycled through a system that doesn't deliver, instead getting the housing solutions that they need so they can survive and thrive.
Okay, so let's focus in on public health care. Los Angeles County has two public health care systems, the Los Angeles County Department of Health and UCLA Health. Combined, these two organizations comprise the region's healthcare safety net and provide care to the region's most vulnerable populations. This unique, this unique partnership between our healthcare system and higher education results in increased access to quality care for the county's residents. If elected to the Board of Supervisors, do you have any plans to strengthen this relationship? And we're going to start with Lindsay.
I want to make sure I don't miss. Yes, I think what we need to do is make sure that the services that the county provides are actually located on campus and that those same services are available throughout the district. I have seen how community clinic in the Valley that's co-located on an LAUSD campus has become a trusted provider because not only can the students access those services while they're at school, but it's a place where their parents can come and also receive support. It can be a family experience. And we know that students on campus can access those services right here at UCLA. We need to make sure that the county is investing in those services and support, making sure that students are able to access a full range of healthcare services, including making sure that our county provides full access to abortion, and making sure that we become a safe haven not only for the students here and for the people who live in LA County, but recognizing that people will be coming from all over the country to Los Angeles. We need to prepare for what's happening across this country and make sure that we're providing those resources and care for anyone to be able to safely access them. We have to make sure that mental health services are invested in and more accessible. We see the impact of the mental health crisis that has resulted from COVID-19. We see it in our daily lives. We were told for about 2 years that if we got within 6 feet of each other, we might kill each other. That has an impact, and we're still unpacking all the ways that has damaged relationships and had harmful impacts on our health. We have to make sure that we're providing services and care to people and meeting them where they are. College campuses, LAUSD campuses, right in their own communities, and not asking people to travel miles and hours away, often when they don't have reliable transportation, and instead ask them to access those services right where they are in their own communities. That's what I'm prepared to do.
Bob?
Yeah, just real quickly, if I could just make one clarification, if it's appropriate in the last question. I'm the author of SB 679. I introduced SB 679. I gave it to Sidney Comlager out of graciousness and partnership. I'm the joint author of that. And if somebody would look at the video, the roll was open about 3 hours, and I'm the one that got the last votes to make it happen because it wasn't happening on the floor. So for whatever that is, just to make sure the record was clear, I gave it to her in partnership. That's the way you do things. And in terms of partnership, look, UCLA is a great place, man. I really like it. And I just went to school here years ago. I started a PhD program here in California history, deep relationships all over the place. And I love what you're doing. A couple of things. It's, to me, yes, partnership, excellent. I'm concerned about union jobs and labor. I'm concerned about contracting out. I made those pledges, and I'm honorable. I have a promise book that I write all my promises down so I don't make a mistake. I'm concerned about the community clinics. Just was able to pass $70 million for retention for folks in community clinics because that's part of the integrated system. But the bottom line, which I agree with my opponent on, is to create the greatest amount of outreach with the greatest amount of professionals to provide the greatest quality of health care at the best possible price, and at the same time, make sure the folks that work in those institutions can make a living. And that's part of it. So I'm sensitive to that, and I just wanted to share that thought.
We're going to marry these past two topics of homelessness and public health and talk a little bit specifically about Governor Newsom's plan that he's called Care Court, which aims to help Californians who are suffering from untreated mental health challenges and substance abuse disorders by creating a court-ordered care plan. In order to do this, you need to have the resources and the facilities to actually send people. According to expert consensus, there should be a minimum of 50 inpatient psychiatric beds per 100,000 people. Currently, LA has just 13 beds for every 100,000 people. Beginning with Bob Hertzberg, do you believe that the county needs more inpatient psychiatric beds? And if so, what would you do as a supervisor to help make this a reality?
The answer to that question is 100% yes, unequivocally. It needs a lot more beds. Just so you know, as we're looking backwards, I was very involved, and I'm co-author of the Care Courts, and have been deeply involved in that issue. And I've been working with Mark Golly, who's really was a genius behind this, and on the Care Courts. It's a really important component of delivery of services to folks. Just out of curiosity, it amazes me, and this happened to me 3 or 4 times, and it's one of the frustrations that informs my reason for running in terms of the management of the county. We had this set up to go to the County of LA for Care Courts, and they delayed it a year. The Board of Supervisors comes in and says, we won't support this, and they want to delay it like another time. Are you kidding me? So the plan is this. First, there's a federal rule that requires a waiver, and we've done it before with the hospital. I was able to do it in East LA with the hospital, the new hospital, 1115 waiver, because you can't have more than 16 beds together. I'd work like crazy to go to Washington. I've served with almost every member of the delegation who's in Congress and are friends of mine to be able to make the California delegation to make that happen. So that's critically important to get that waiver. Two, we have $2 billion in cash under the Steinberg rule that's sitting in the bank that's not spent. It's, you know, I mean, for the Yiddish corps in the room, it's a Lockenkopf. You got to have a hole in your head. It's unbelievable. And we had a plan where we had a mental health. We all wanted some beds out of a program in Italy. We gave $116 million to the county, and in May 20th, 2019, and they haven't spent a nickel. It's a real management problem. We don't have a resource problem. We have a leadership problem. And I would further suggest that we just gave $1 billion in our backward thinking to community colleges to be able to train mental health professionals, because integrating the beds, folks to pick people up on the street, the 988 system, all the other elements of what it takes to make something work as it relates to homelessness, relates to mental health, the fentanyl problem, one of the reasons why I'm so strong on public safety, because the issue there. So it's a big picture, but yes, it's very, very important, and that's what I would do.
Lindsay, your turn.
Thank you. Taking credit for the governor's work and then criticizing the work of others while not offering other plans that actually provide solutions is what my opponent has to offer. But what I have to offer is solutions. How do we actually get more mental health beds in our neighborhoods? We have to find the community partners who are ready to do it. I've already spoken with folks at St. John's in Santa Monica. I've spoken with a couple of different locations in the Valley that are more than prepared, very eager and excited to have more mental health beds open in their facilities. And we need to make sure that the resources of the county are directly invested in making sure those beds are accessible immediately. There is a large carryover. There is funding already available from a variety of sources. It just hasn't been directly invested in those solutions. We have to have somebody who is not just allocating funding to a problem, but instead actually on the ground implementing the solutions that people are looking for. That's the experience I have at the local level. When we didn't have a testing site during COVID, I worked to make sure that we got a testing site in our city, and making sure that that testing site continued to stay open even after vaccines were available, as we've seen the waves that have come and gone. Making sure that testing, reliable testing in community was accessible was important to help keep people safe and healthy. We also pushed back on the Department of Health in response to monkeypox, making sure that people could access services in their own communities, and making sure that we had a testing site and a vaccination site in our community. That's the kind of practical implementation and problem solving that people are looking for, making sure those mental health beds get into their communities. I have experience providing solutions on the ground, working with the county to do it, working as a local government partner to do it, and that's why I should be in this seat to actually deliver the solutions that people are looking for.
Okay, so this question really examines the role of the county public health department in the COVID-19 crisis. Restaurants, service businesses such as hair and nail salons, small retail shops, and other mom and pop businesses have been impacted by COVID, suffering extreme financial hardships. As a result, thousands of businesses countywide have closed. Many of these businesses were extremely frustrated by the sometimes conflicting and ever-changing orders from the county public health department. Last month, for example, the board came very close to imposing a new indoor masking requirement, which triggered a vote by 5 cities, Beverly Hills, Pasadena, Manhattan Beach, El Segundo, and Torrance, to defy the county and refuse to use any of their city's resources to enforce any new indoor masking requirement from the county. All of this points to a growing distrust of the county's public health department. If you are elected, what will you do to restore confidence in the county's public health department amid the continuing mutation of the pandemic? Lindsay, you're up first.
Well, the first thing we need to do is deputize regional leaders under the director of the Department of Public Health, who actually understand on the ground what the realities are in each community, and make sure that we are addressing those real issues in our communities with someone who's familiar with them. I heard even before COVID from a variety of business owners, many in the hospitality industry, that They would have public health officials come and inspect their business. They would do all the things they were told to do. A new official would come out who was different than the last one and identifying a whole set of other issues that they had to address before they were able to open. That causes delays, it's costs in dollars, it's costs in workforce development. We need to make sure that we are helping businesses get open and stay open. I was mayor during COVID-19 in my city, and we were awarded by the LA EDC the most business-friendly city during that time because of the ways that we supported our businesses to keep them open and safe for both the workers and the people who patronize those businesses. Also, as a small business owner myself, I worked to make sure that we kept people employed in my own company and making sure that we had the resources we needed to support our business through this difficult time. It wasn't easy, but that hands-on experience, that real-world experience of looking at your workers and with them wondering whether you're going to keep them employed, whether they're going to stay on health care, whether you're going to keep them safe, that's something I have experience living through during this time of crisis. That's the kind of problem-solving and experience we need on the Board of Supervisors. And I'm prepared to constitute a body, at least for our district, hopefully countywide if I have the agreement of my colleagues, to make sure that business leaders are at the table with us so that the solutions that they find, because while I am a small business owner, I'm not a business owner in every sector, in every industry, we have to make sure that people with that experience are helping to inform our decision making. That's what I'm prepared to do because it's what I've already done. And that's why we need somebody with that kind of experience in this seat.
Bob?
Yeah, again, let me go back to the answer that I gave you on Metro. Your job as an executive in a leadership role is to provide guidance, direction for your institution. What happened in this case, and I have experience in all 58 counties, I had to deal with all 58 counties across the state during the pandemic as a statewide majority leader, is that you need to get advice. If you hire a lawyer, you hire an architect, you hire somebody in profession, you listen to their advice, and you take responsibility and make the decision. What happens in government, and it's just the truth, is politicians often are scared to take responsibility because, oh my God, somebody's going to blame you, and if somebody fails, it's your fault. So you stand up somebody else, you put them out there to do it, and if there's a problem, they get thrown under the bus. It's the oldest trick in the book. So now we've got this individual who you know, whose job it is in public health. You know, the old story is if you're a ship captain, your goal is to protect the ship, you never take it out of port. There's complex responsibilities in life, you know, that are required. And it just time and time again, where businesses were shut down, they took the necessary precautions. They did everything you were supposed to do. I'll give you two quick examples. One, I represent Universal Studios. Disneyland had precautions, the exact same ones. Magic Mountain, this county comes in and says, no, you can't do it. Shut down jobs, shut down people. The superintendent of public instructions at Calabasas gets a call from the supervisor. He'd open the schools, all the precautions, no problem. Guess what happens? He's told not to do it. Next day, she gets called up by the county official and says, close down your schools. There's a responsibility that you take in managing the complexity of issues when you're a leader. And you can't just fluff it off. And I think a lot of that happened here. And a lot of that frustration, whether it was in Beverly Hills or other folks, happened. And I would just share with you in terms of the business issue, the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce overwhelmingly is supporting me as it relates to business issues in the community of West Hollywood.
So as you might recall, Darnell mentioned early on in the evening, our candidates get the same questions all night long, except for one. And I get to ask this one. So Bob, you will get the first one.
Okay.
And this is about, the topic here to both of you is about governance and leadership. And Bob, as you well know, you have been in the business of politics for many, many years, serving in both the Assembly and the State Senate at numerous leadership positions. And now, as you mentioned, you would like to sit on the Board of Supervisors. Can you tell us how you will bring that experience on the statewide level into local government, and what do you think distinguishes you most from your opponent?
First of all, I don't know exactly how many years my opponent served, but she said she served for 15 years. I've served 14 years. So I just happened to leave government for 12. First of all, I spent a lot of time in not-for-profit organizations, community organizations, and helping people get elected and helping the community for decades. Then I went into government just for 6 years. I left for 12 years to travel the world to work on renewable energy because I thought it was so important. And then I've come back and been for 8 years. I haven't been in that in terms of how long I've been in. So I know that impression's there because I've left for a long period of time, but that's just not accurate. Two, the issue, and I think it's really important to understand, there's 58 counties in California. Counties are very different instruments of government. They are subdivisions of the state of California. They do the state's business. They do jails, and they do probation, and they do foster care. All the things that I deal with. I was chair of the local government committee and had to deal with all the local government issues. So it's not like it's a separate charter city or a general law city where you have a general manager and the people are part-time city council people in like LA, but it's deeply involved. And so I would suggest Project Home Key that we want to do, Project Room Key. Oh, those are from the state of California. Care courts. Oh, that's the state of California. Reforming probation. All of those issues are integral parts of what we do, down to the gnarly stuff like the local agency formation commission, in which I spent 4 years writing the law, that deal with the interrelations between cities and counties. There's 526 subdivisions of government. So in water and all the other complex issues and sanitation districts and all those things. And so I would just suggest that this is the right arm of the left arm of the state, and they're literally integrated. And my frustration, and the reason I'm running, is because of the failures of the systems. We go out, pass the laws, write the systems, write the laws, and then it comes to the county and nothing happens. And that is horrible, and I'm here to fix it.
Lindsay Horvath, similar question to you. What do you see as the sharpest difference between yourself and your opponent? And if elected, how would you adjust from one level of government, serving on the local level, to a position where you would have an expanded constituency and different responsibilities?
Well, I'm already working at the local level, so I have a leg up there, and I have the experience working with the county and bridging those gaps between local and county services. Not only serving in my own community in West Hollywood, but also serving on the regional level as president of California Contract Cities Association, the association of cities that contract for services largely with LA County for sheriff, fire, public works, you name it. And so I was their liaison. Again, I was their president during the time of crisis that was COVID, that is COVID. And so I saw firsthand where the county met the moment in a time of emergency and where those gaps in service really failed people. And I have seen, as I've gone throughout the district, experiences we've had in my own community manifested in different ways. So it's that hands-on, practical experience working at the local level. When the state didn't show up, when the federal government didn't show up, if the county didn't show up, we still have to show up for our residents. I have to make sure that we're working with everything that we've got to take care of people. And I have to make decisions that the very next day I have to face the people who are impacted by those decisions. And it's sometimes tough decision making, but we have to solve problems by working together and bringing people together. I've worked also on the board of Cal Cities, the National League of Cities, so I've served at all varieties of levels of government in terms of how we're serving local issues. So I'm not afraid of the size of the county. What I'm afraid of is that we are not going to have somebody who knows how to deliver the solutions. It's one thing to allocate funding, but the only thing that my opponent has been in charge of is other politicians. I've actually worked with the sheriff's department. I've actually worked with the fire department. I've had to work with the county to deliver services at the local level and make sure that people are getting the help that they need. And that's the kind of experience that's needed in this role, practical problem solving.
Okay, so now we shift gears to the rapid fire questions. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to respond to the question. The first question, in this moment, we know the relationship with the sheriff, you just mentioned the sheriff, and the Board of Supervisors is very antagonistic. Just last week, the supervisor whose seat you are seeking had her home raided by the sheriff's deputies. What would you do to heal or repair this rift? Lindsay, you're up first.
Well, I would work to make sure that we, first of all, have a leader in charge of the sheriff's department that will help restore trust and accountability in the department. It's why I'm not supporting the sheriff, and I think it's disappointing that Bob won't acknowledge the dysfunction that currently exists in the department as a result of the failed leadership of our current sheriff. We need to make sure that we're helping law enforcement succeed by providing them the resources they need to fight violent crime and keep people safe. We need to support them by enhancing the kinds of services we offer and taking things off their plate that they're not uniquely trained to do, by doing things like investing in unarmed security ambassadors like we've done in our community to take some of those lower level issues off the plate of our law enforcement.
Sorry, your time is up.
Oh, okay, very good, thanks.
Bob?
Yeah, it's the prayer that I talked about at the beginning of this, and it's been my whole experience, whether it being supported by both parties. Most of the legislation that I've ever written, it's not talking to other people, it has been with other folks where I've let them. I did privacy for a year, and then somebody else was the author. Ben Allen was just the author on plastics and stuff. I just don't think calling press conferences and writing op-eds to stick your finger in people's eyes is a way to fix problems. All you're going to do is further exacerbate the challenges that we currently have. Look, I don't like what this guy's done. I don't like it at all, but I just think screaming and yelling about it has caused the problem that we're facing, and the reason why we don't have 700 positions being
Your time is
paid
up.
for.
Thank
you.
All right.
Yeah, these are big questions with not a lot of time.
30
And
seconds.
here's another one that was being discussed just yesterday at the first in-person with the Public Board of Supervisors meeting. Incarceration, with a mission here to eventually close Men's Central Jail by expanding the continuum of care for individuals being diverted or released from jail. What alternatives to incarceration do you see, and what are some of the initiatives that you believe can help get us to that point in time? And Bob Hertzberg, we begin with you.
I spent 6 years trying to reform the bail system, not saying that people who were a public safety risk or a flight risk should be in jail, but 63% of people in that jail are pretrial detainees, most of whom are there because they don't have any money, not because they're a risk to the community. That's a big piece. Mental health, separated out. Issues of drug, all the issues we talked about with respect to the substance abuse, same thing. But we do need to have some semblance of a jail because there are certain people that are criminals and they need to be held in jail.
Lindsay.
The Alternatives to Incarceration plan was informed by a bottoms-up approach, informed by community, and it already exists in the county. It just doesn't have enough funding to realize what many of the promises are in that plan. So we have to fully fund the Alternatives to Incarceration plan, make sure that programs like pretrial detention, that make sure that people don't miss their court appointments, to keep people safe in communities when they are, before they see their court date, and to make sure that that level of accountability that people are looking for in their communities actually exists. Right now, probation is tasked with that responsibility, but they're not delivering, and we see that in our communities.
Okay, so let's talk about inflation and cost of living in 30 seconds. In 2022, home prices in the county were up 13% compared to last year, selling for a median price of $800,000, while rent increases are outpacing wage growth. This is occurring at a time of unprecedented inflation. What are your plans to ensure housing and associated costs of living are more accessible? Lindsay?
Well, we need to make sure that we help people stay in the housing that they can otherwise afford. As a renter myself, I'd be the only renter on the board, and I think there are a lot of renters who are worried as these eviction moratoria and rent increase moratoria are lifted, what that's going to mean for their future and what affordability is actually going to be able to look like. So we need to make sure that they have a right to counsel, that they have funds that they can access but for one missed paycheck, and make sure that they're able to stay in the housing that they can afford. And we need to make sure that we're connecting them with Section 8 vouchers. We just heard earlier how much money has been left on the table. We have to reform that program to make it work.
Bob?
The law of supply and demand is one of the few laws that we can't repeal or modify or amend. This is a manuscript of a book that I'm about to publish called Course Correction, Restoring the Social Contract in California. I can't address all the issues, but chapter 10 of this book says home is where the wealth is. I've spent the last 2 years working on a plan in Sacramento, and I intend to put it in the ballot for $25 billion bond issue, private sector money to give down payment assistance, because when people rent a place at the end of 10 years, all you have is a bigger rent. If at the end of 10 years you own it and you pay back the thing at the end of time, you have equity and you build wealth.
30 seconds on climate change. Amazing work being done here at UCLA. Experts identifying heat as one of the greatest climate injustices facing our state, certainly happening in this region. If elected, how might we best move forward to shield the most vulnerable Angelenos from the harmful effects of climate change? First 30 seconds goes to you, Bob.
Yeah, FEMA says that Los Angeles has the single most delicate aspect of climate. Well, for me, again, this is when I sat down and did my diagnostic. Do I want to run for this office? Is it something that I think I can bring value to? Climate was a big issue. I said I took 12 years off of my life. I traveled the world. I won the World Bank Award. I was 50 people to save the planet. I actually talk about rubber meets the road. I have a plan of how to raise the money, how to bring businesses local, how to build those transformers and all the local stuff we've got to do to actually deal with climate change, let alone the issue of extreme heat, where we just bought a huge amount of money and doing big projects in the valley for green schools and the like.
Lindsay.
Here he goes again. If Bob was so successful on these issues, why am I the candidate who's endorsed by the Sierra Club, the League of Conservation Voters locally, and even the state level got involved because they know that he's the chair of what they call the Polluter Caucus in Sacramento. Big Oil Bob has over $250,000 invested in his campaigns from corporate polluters. What we need to do is have somebody in this seat who wants to fully fund the county's plan for sustainability, which has won awards, but certainly requires the funding in order to make sure that the plans, short, medium, and long term, are realized. And those goals were informed by a bottoms-up approach. Pacoima Beautiful really led, shout out to them, in District 3, and we need to make sure that their equity lens is looked through at these issues.
Okay, so this is the fifth and final rapid-fire question, and it deals with youth and foster care. LA County cares for about a third of the state's foster children.
Right.
Foster care is a racialized environment, and children of color suffer poorer treatment while in foster care and are at heightened risk for exposure to the justice system. Last year, the Board of Supervisors voted to begin a pilot program to test colorblind removal, which eliminates race and socioeconomic status when deciding to remove a child from their home. Do you believe that blind removal will create a more equitable foster system? Lindsay?
I think it's one solution to the problem, and I'm proud of Supervisor Mitchell, who has endorsed me in this race, proposing that solution. But we need to do much more, and that includes investing in the disparities that we see in communities of color and making sure that we're providing services and support, that we're actually providing service providers as well who look like the communities that they need to serve. That's how there will be trust and proper delivery of services in communities of color. So it's not just the colorblind test, but it's making sure that the services and support that are needed to then take care of those children are also invested in.
Bob, your 30 seconds.
Yes. And secondly, and more importantly, foster kids are our kids. We are the legal responsibility of these human beings. And if you look at where they're going in terms of drugs, homelessness, and stuff, we have failed miserably. It is, I just read a report that was done by a Blue Ribbon Commission, that, again, another failure of the county 4 or 5 years ago, and they've done almost nothing to be able to deal with the recommendations. And I talked to some of the members, like, what happened and why? It's, again, we have resources, we don't have the management skills, and hence why I'm seeking to run for this office.
We've come to the final portion of our evening, candidate closing statement. We've talked about a whole lot of issues, but if there's one that's near and dear to you, now is the time to talk about it. You've got 2 minutes apiece on the clock, and we begin with Bob Hertzberg.
In the front row, there's my very significant other and mother of my 2-year-old Athena Grace, Dr. Catherine Tellis, and she gets to be here tonight, because her mother, the grandmother of Athena, is at home watching Athena, so she could be here. But I only raise that in terms of the issue of working mom. She's an old UCLA graduate here, women's studies and the like, that it's important to understand that, and it's important in my life. Look, I've just watched this over many years, and I just see the issue of scale is such an important thing. There are 38 people, if counted correctly, that were homeless in the city of West Hollywood. Beverly Hills went up by 220 people. It's just, these are great ideas in terms of talking about it for sound bites and the like. When I was Speaker of the House, again, I think broadly. My book here is called Working Clothes, another book that I did. Problems are nothing more than opportunities in working clothes. 30 years of ideas. Some worked and some didn't, but I had the guts to try them. And that's what you do. And so the idea is, as I see this, is that the state is so critical. I saw it every day, this notion of the argument of local government. This is a quarter of the state of California. What we do here informs so many other decisions. It informs the economy, and the like. And I just think there's extraordinary opportunities for us to really avoid some of the significant problems that have hurt us tremendously in the county, and to take things to the next level. I think this whole idea of climate change, we can build the transformers. We have 4,000 volt transformers on the poles, and we need to go to 20,000 volts. Why don't we build them here? Undergrounding the cables, all that stuff. We have the financial wherewithal to do it, and it creates the framework. And what I would suggest, the last thing is this, is so often we focus on whatever the problem of the day is, but we don't think about tomorrow. I'm thinking about water, economic development, jobs, things that aren't on top of mind when you do a poll, but are critically important when you're called upon the task to govern. I have that big picture experience, and that's what I want to bring to this job.
Lindsay Horvath, your closing statement.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this conversation. It's so important to educate people about the role of supervisor, because many people don't even know what it is, what it does, and the ways that they're impacted by the role that a supervisor plays in their life. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. I'm not here to scare you into voting for me. I'm not here to pitch you my book. I'm here to offer solutions to the problems that people are facing in their communities and their neighborhoods, because that's really what people are looking for. I've worked at the local level my entire time in local government. I've been a part-time elected official, and I focused on the local government. I've only run for one seat. My opponent in this race alone interviewed for another seat for endorsement for state controller before he decided to get into this race. And, that's his prerogative, but what we don't need are career politicians who are offering more of the same. We need change. And I appreciate the compliment that our homelessness numbers are very low, and they have decreased. They're not quite that low, but I am happy to welcome people into my community to show you what we have done, because we have delivered results in our community, and that's what I'm offering. You don't have to take my word for it. Come to my community, you can see it. And we have piloted solutions that will deliver not just for communities like mine, but for all the neighborhoods in District 3 by working together with people and solving problems together. That's what I have done. We've been a laboratory of ideas that have been exported to the broader region. We know that we know how to solve problems by working together. So if you want to know what I've done or what I'm intending to do as your supervisor, you can go to lindsayhorvath.com. Feel free to follow us on social media, Lindsay P. Horvath. If you want to know what my opponent has done, go to stopbigoilbob.com, and you can see his record. And that's the difference. It's a clear contrast, and I'm ready to move us forward.
That concludes our forum this evening. I want to end with some notes of thanks and gratitude. First, to the two candidates sitting on the stage. This is my third forum with the two of them. I think they're pretty sick of me by now. I am not sick of them.
Not even close.
I learn so much from them each and every time, and especially this evening, so thanks to you. I want to thank everyone here in the audience this evening for attending our event. There is a lot on the ballot which is going to be arriving to you any day now, and I really hope that evenings like tonight and situations like tonight help you make an informed decision, because it's an important decision. I really want to thank our community partners this evening, the North Westwood Neighborhood Council, the West LA Chamber of Commerce, the Westwood Community Council, the Westwood Neighborhood Council, and the Westwood Village Improvement Association, and of course our venue, the beautiful Hammer Museum. Collaboration from all is so deeply appreciated. My sincere thanks to my co-moderator, Executive Vice Chancellor, and new Provost Darnell Hunt. So much on your plate these days. Really grateful for your time. And all the tremendous members of the UCLA team who helped organize this evening's event. I have a feeling I don't need to say this to anybody in this room, but just in case, if you haven't done so yet, Please register to vote. Tell the people maybe you've already registered, maybe someone in your life has not yet. Please let them know. It's a good time to do so right now. And that concludes our event this evening. And again, if you missed it, we will be broadcasting it on Spectrum News 1, 8 o'clock, October 7th. Thanks so much.